Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk to you about Vedic astrology and also events in the world, but also about your horoscopes and your charts and what you can expect in the week ahead. So it's currently November 12th. My name, again, my name is Dr. Gary Gomes. I have been a Vedic astrologer for over 30 years, and I've been doing this show for roughly, I think, the past 4 years now. And I I had some cars going by, so I didn't want to include that or speak over the audio. And I will talk to you about the planets, their effect on you, and if you want to look up my resume or my qualifications, please do so. On one of the earlier videos, I went into really, really long explanation. I am having a book coming up. I am having a school. The school is already open. People can contact me for readings or lessons at 508-525-0001. And let me put the closed captioning on. I forgot to do that. Um, And so again, the number to reach me at is 508-525-0001, or you can email me at Gary Gomes, the letter G, at gmail.com. That's Gary Gomes, at gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, although I'm not that active on Twitter, and also on a variety of other social media sites. Also, you can look up the Northeast Institute of Vedic Astrology and Studies, and that's NEIVAS. And I just renewed the webpage, so the webpage is going to be much more active this year, this coming year, and I'll be posting some articles on it, things like that, so you can get a taste of what I'm like and what I practice and what I actually tell you. So we just came out of um, a busy news week and election in which um, certain expectations were not met. Uh, Now again, it depends on what part of the political spectrum you are, as whether or not expectations were met or were not met. I think one of the reasons there were so many incorrect predictions, I'm going to show you an astrology map in a second, is because of this, and I'm going to pull it up again. Now, the elections happened on an eclipse or the day of an eclipse. Now, this is the United States elections, obviously. And so you can see down here, the eclipse occurred between these two signs, between Libra down here, so that's Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. So the eclipse occurred between Libra and Aries. Now, the interesting thing about Libra as a sign is it's not really quite as wishy-washy in Vedic astrology as it is in Western astrology. It's a very dynamic sign. It's a change agent. But when K2 is there, it's slow to produce change. It'll produce unexpected change. And I think some people are looking at certain um, polling and expecting polling to turn out the way the polling normally does. And there's two problems with that. The polls have been mucked up since 2016. Basically, it's always kind of a crapshoot, and there was also added elements that happened right before the election. The attack on Speaker Pelosi's husband complicated things. Certain candidates seemed to be doing better, but votes had already been cast before the final election day. So a lot of these things, so our election cycle starts much earlier than the actual day of the election. And I think every astrologer is going to have to start taking that into account. We have several races out there we still don't know the results of. Nevada, and I believe the governorship, this is as of November 12th, the governorship of Arizona among them. And what happened in Georgia is virtually a replay of what happened 2 years ago. So a lot of these things tend to factor in to predictions. So it's a good lesson for me to be more careful in terms of saying things are going to work as planned, especially if K2 is involved. Also, just given the idea that the sun is debilitated during the election cycle, there's also a kind of a desire not to give one group too much power or make one group too ascendant over another. Plus, I'm not minimizing the fact that a lot of people on both sides hate the other side with a vitriol I have not seen in decades. I haven't seen this kind of vitriol, this kind of polarization since the Vietnam War. In the Vietnam War era, I'm going to be honest with you, it was worse. But I think one of the things that you're looking at is if in 2024, if inflation is not addressed, if crime is not addressed, if abortion is not addressed, we'll see a very strong split in the country. And that's happening right now. A very strong split is already occurring. This isn't any kind of magnificent analysis on my part, but it depends on whether or not things start to settle down just a little bit, which I don't think they will, and whether or not the United States gets involved in a war, which they might try to do as a proxy war over the next couple of years. It won't be a full-scale war, so everyone who's afraid of World War III starting, scale that back a bit. That's not going to happen. But I think we do have certain things in the chart that I'm going to tell you about to look out for this week, and also to dampen down expectations. I think so. So again, we have this extended election cycle, right? And I think some astrologers should look at, myself included, should look at individual charts or regional charts or things like that. It's a lot more work, but just because the voting systems are so diversified across the country, that it seems to make sense to do a more fractured approach to prediction. The other thing is, if we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's look at this chart just in particular. I'm contacting you right now. Mars and Moon are in the first house. So people are a bit angry right now. This is the house of politics for the world. So there's a lot of confusion, a lot of disruption in politics, and a lot of bad communications. Don't forget, K2 and Mercury were really close together when the election occurred in the United States. And you'll see a lot of political leaders around the world sort of struggling with what to do with shortages, especially caused by K2 and the Sun. And most governments seem to be pretty ineffectual about them. I've heard rumors that Thailand has run out of gasoline. So it'll start in a country which is, oh gosh, let's say poorer than the United States. And it'll start spreading to other parts of the world. We have Jupiter in the ninth house aspected by Saturn. So usually when that happens, there's not a clear picture on victory for anybody. So Jupiter institutes a desire for change, but it's retrograde, so there's some uncertainty as to whether or not people want change. And the aspect of Saturn just means we're going to go through this for another couple of years, to be honest with you. We'll get a little bit of a break around January 23rd, as I've said before, when Saturn stops aspecting Jupiter. It'll be in the 12th house from Jupiter. But I think one of the things you'll also see is that the resources will continue to be scarce. Inflation may calm down for a few months, then start up again with a vengeance around April. The other thing is you have Venus over here in Scorpio right now. Venus was also with Mercury, so that made people perhaps a little bit unrealistic about their chances, or a little bit punitive towards other groups, towards groups they didn't like. The other thing is, I mean, was there dishonesty in the election? I can't tell. I'm not on the ground. This combination, though, does indicate so at least deceit on the part of government. So that's kind of a general term, but certainly some of the things I've heard coming out of governments from around the world have been out and out misrepresentations of reality. It's not, so I'm being kind there. I'm not calling them lies, I'm calling them misrepresentations. And so that doesn't mean the situation is worse than it seems to be. It just means it's different than what it seems to be. That Mars Moon conjunction, everybody's kind of in a fighting mood right now. Sun Mercury K2, nobody's quite telling the truth. They're kind of like hiding their motivations. They're kind of like trying to sneak in through the back door, and this is true for a lot of people, not just one party or another. Venus in the sixth house, it's a struggle to get anything done, especially romantically. Although some people who have been worried about the state of their relationships can actually take some comfort in the fact that Venus has moved out of this conjunction with K2, and relationship life should improve quite a bit over the next few weeks. However, there will be more fighting and more anger as Mars goes back into the sign within a couple of days. It goes back into Taurus within a couple of days. So, but this will be interesting because there'll be a lot of Short-temperedness mainly because of the Sun-Venus conjunction aspected by Mars. So Sun moves into the sign on the 15th, and Mars moves into the sign within about a day or so. So you'll have Sun and Mars aspecting each other, while Venus is in what's called combustion range of the Sun. Now, this is not necessarily the most horrible combination. Venus is close to the Sun a lot. It's used to combustion. Venus combustion isn't affected. Venus isn't affected by being close to the Sun as badly as certain other planets are, because it's in that state a great deal. But I think one of the things you'll have to look for is people still feeling a little bit depressed, a little bit hopeless. People essentially believing that one side is evil and the other side is good, mainly because of this K2 Mercury conjunction, which really is going to be active for a little while. And Mars will be aspecting Mercury as well. So that's another line combination. Mercury is going to move into the sun within about a day. So you'll have Mars and Mercury continuing a cavalcade of lying, political lying. And let's see now. Saturn aspecting Jupiter. So a lot of things that have to be done, a lot of things that are promised to be done will not be done. Rahu's in Aries. Again, a lot of discontent with elected leaders. Whoever is in charge, or whoever is perceived to be in charge, excuse me, whoever is perceived to be in charge will be a target. That means both in the United States, that means Joe Biden and Donald Trump. It doesn't mean this amorphous group called the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. Essentially, the big leaders will be the targets. And so essentially the people who are the heads of the parties. And there were exit polling results that indicated that about 2/3 of voters didn't want Biden to run in 2024. Now that may change over the next couple of years. We don't know, but that's pretty. So even though they'll vote for a Democrat, about 38% of Democrats didn't want Biden running again. So I think one of the things you have in these kinds of scenarios is a lot of confusion, a lot of angst. The only thing that's really clear is that everyone's unclear about something. Everyone feels a little bit helpless and a little bit confused. That won't clear up really for about another, I say about another year or so, to be honest. And I think these things are, they'll hurt the economy, continue to hurt the economy. I hope, and again, keep something in mind. I'm one of those people who loves it when the economy is going well, not because it benefits me, but because it benefits everybody. If the economy is doing well, everybody seems to be happier. They seem to be more content. They seem to be, their material needs are being fulfilled. That's not a bad thing. Okay. As a matter of fact, it's one of the functions of government to not only look out for the planet and other people, but to look out for its own citizens. Okay. So that's true whether we go to the United States or Canada or Germany or Japan or China or Australia or Africa, or no matter, or South America, anywhere we go in the globe, a government should be looking out to protect and provide for its people through whatever system it deems best. Okay, so that this combination right here indicates that's not happening right now. And people are going to be very upset about it over the next, at least over the next year or so. Okay, so so let's go on to looking at astrological signs. So we do have this desire to do good things, desire to expand, desire to correct mistakes, but Saturn is restricting us. Saturn's making us look at things and say, well, not so fast. You got to fix this, you got to fix that. And also Saturn's going to be, it won't be aspecting Mars, but not for a while. So I think really when you have these kinds of combinations, the anger is pushed up a notch. The potential for violence and even catastrophe is pushed up a notch. And you have to be really, really careful. I'm gonna stop the share again and go back to my beautiful face. And okay, and again, I know I look a little bit washed out, but that's life. Okay, so, and as a matter of fact, if we look at the Navamsha chart, this is interesting because K2 and Moon are in the first house in the Navamsha chart. So people are a little bit depressed or upset. And again, I think one of the things that we have to get past is good guys versus bad guys in the world, and enemies versus villains. I'm sorry, and heroes versus villains. Um, Everybody, I think, is doing what they think is right or what their people want them to do, which translates into is right. Okay, so um, um, I don't think anybody's like. I think some people are misguided. I think some people are have cried wolf too many times, and that's being causing problems. Oh, there is a Mars Saturn aspect. I neglected to mention that there was a Mars Saturn aspect. Um, so Mars is aspecting Saturn in the eighth house from Mars. My apologies. So that perfectionism comes from that as well. Okay. So Mars, Saturn, and Mars is in some ways connected with every planet on this chart because Mars is in the same sign with the moon. It's the ruler of the sign in which Venus is located. Venus is the ruler of the sign in which the Sun, Mercury, and Cancer are located. Mars is aspecting Saturn, and Saturn is aspecting Jupiter from Mars's exaltation sign, and Rahu is in Mars's sign. So you have a lot of Martian influence. This is a very Marsy kind of a chart. That doesn't necessarily mean that we'll go to war, but everybody's going to be in kind of a fighting mood. Okay. So as we go through these last, we won't have a clear idea. I think, as I said before, I think last broadcast I said before, we won't really have a clear idea of who won the election until after the eclipse came. And I don't think really until after November 15th. And it may continue into court battles as late as mid-January next year. So I hope I'm wrong about that because I don't like it when those things happen. But but and the reason I don't like it is because people can't get on with their normal lives. They can't get on with it. addressing the problems that are facing us. So, getting back to individual charts, Rahu is in the first house for Aries. Okay, so Mars is in the third house. The Lord of the first house is in the third house, but it's going back. Aries is moving back into the position where it wants more security and more money. The moon is in the third house. It's not quite sure what it wants. And relationship wise, it's having some communications problems with its relationship partner, but it's not necessarily looking for new relationship partners right now. So that's at least one improvement. And Saturn, career-wise, it looks like another strong month for Aries, but again, a lot of work, just a ton of work for and a lot of expenses. For Taurus, Taurus has Mars in the second house, so it'll be a little bit angry, a little bit upset with people. It's in the same sign with the moon, so this combination tends to make people a little bit aggressive. Sun's in the sixth house with K2 and Mercury. A lot of people with Taurus rising are going to be susceptible to illnesses or addictions over the next few months or so. Venus is in the seventh house. There'll be a lot of focus in the sign on relationship life. As a matter of fact, this combination Mars and Venus sign and Venus and Mars sign gives a mutual reception, they call it in Western astrology, or Parivartana yoga. So a lot of people will be a little bit obsessed with sexual activity, especially especially Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. So all the fixed signs. So again, those signs should be careful about getting into relationships based on physical attraction, because they'll tend to be a little bit short-lived. Mars is in the second house, Sun is in the sixth, Venus in the seventh, Saturn's in the ninth, so tough bosses, but basically good for material gains or financial gains, because of Jupiter being in the 12th house, but being in the 11th house, excuse me. But again, Rahu's in the 12th house, there'll be a compulsion to spend or a compulsion to look for answers outside of one's sphere of familiarity. So a lot of these people will be really interested in what's happening psychically, what's happening in the future. Gemini is going to be, has been very aggressive this past month. It's been good for gains, but it'll also find it's a little bit at odds with its friends, or its friends will be costing it a little bit of money. But Moon is in the first house, so that is actually good for fame for the sign. Sun, K2, and Mercury in the fifth house tend to give some problems with children, some problems with relationship life, at least especially love affairs, not long-term relationships. And Venus in the sixth house, this sign will have some difficulty with keeping expenses in control, but this is good. This is what's called a Viprit Raj Yoga. The expenses will go for health-related things or things that are needed. Seventh house Lord is in the 10th house. This sign will view its relationship partner as basically its career. That will change around April, when Jupiter moves into Aries, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But relationship partners have been a little bit sad or depressed lately, especially over the past couple of months. And that at least is starting to go away a little bit. Venus is in combustion until around mid-December. So you'll find people getting offended or upset or angry a little bit more easily than normal. And that's especially true for this sign. This will be a weakness for this particular sign. For Cancer, Cancer has Sun, Venus, Sun, Ketu, and Mercury in the fourth house. Venus is in the fifth house, so it's actually is good for romantic encounters. But that's a very short-lived combination. It's only like around 3 or 4 days. You'll also have more relationship interests coming your way over the next few days. And some enemies among conventional people or people who are more spiritual or more religiously bound, not spiritual, but more religiously bound than you are, more traditional than you are. Saturn aspects Jupiter in this chart. It's going to give a real struggle to hold on to what you have in terms of relationship life. But it won't be bad. It'll just mean relationships will seem to be a lot of work, a lot of effort. Jupiter's in the ninth house, very good for career success, but a lot of hard work connected with that. And Rahu's in the 11th house, so that gives, Rahu's in the 10th house. So there will be an ascendancy for you career-wise for cancers, but I think you'll also see, this is again Vedic Cancer, so that's July 15th. That's July 15th through August 15th. And I think you'll have some dissatisfaction with career life, but also some new friendships coming in and also some new fame. For Leo has Sun, Ketu, and Mercury in the third house, so it's not quite sure what it wants. Venus is in the fourth house, though, so that should make it calm for at least a couple of days. Saturn is in the sixth house. Again, this sign should be careful that it doesn't overextend itself, doesn't get too upset, and it may find relationship partners opposing it quite a bit. For Jupiter's in the eighth house, good benefits to relationship partners. Relationship partners will seem to be bringing in more money than normal, but also difficult to satisfy or not quite sure what they want. And in terms of friendships will prosper, they will grow. There'll be a lot of career life for this sign also. For Virgo sits in, I have to look at the time just to make sure I'm not running over. Virgo has Sun, Mercury, Ketu in the second house. So a lot of people with Virgo risings or Virgo suns will find it difficult to communicate with people. That will only be for a little while longer. But I think that there's a general tendency for Virgos to be, for people with Sun and Virgos to be misunderstood or even unduly critical of other people over the next 6 or 7 months. Venus is in the third house, strong desire for artistic expression in the sign, strong desire for comfort for the sign over the next month or so, and strong desire for communications and more socializing. Saturn is in the fifth house, not a lot of opportunity for politics or for socializing or for entertainment or for children, and some unhappiness to children because Saturn's in the fifth house of children. So the fifth house has to do with the person's mind, but also their entertainment, political life. It's a house of politics. And also, and I can remember teaching a class just recently and saying, well, politics is sort of like reality TV now. It's really considering who we have on the public stage, that's not surprising, but it's a little bit like reality TV. And I think we've gotten used to this show, this large ongoing narrative about existential threats, whether it be to safety or freedom or the truth or people's rights or corrupting people. whatever the thing may be. And that Saturn in the fifth house is giving this sign a lot of difficulty in terms of figuring out what makes it happy. Jupiter's in the seventh house. Again, this will give a lot of relationship opportunities to this sign. It'll give new partnerships, but they'll be working partnerships. Mars is Rahu's in the eighth house, a lot of interest in metaphysical or spiritual studies, and also a strong desire to be alone. Mars and Moon in the 10th house, strong desire to make an impact on the world or to make the world a better place. For Libra rising, Libra's been kind of in a quandary over the past few months, and it's mainly because of K2's presence there. This is usually detrimental to relationships, K2 and Rahu being in these particular signs, but usually people don't take action on relationships or divorces or things like that, or partnerships. But it will break up some partnerships. And I think the majority of those things you'll see are actually business partnerships or alliances changing, alliances shifting unexpectedly in some cases. And with the Lord of this sign in the second house of money, you'll start to see the signs focus shift more towards financial growth, more towards financial uh, uh, security. And Saturn is aspecting the first house in this chart. So again, this sign will feel a little bit constrained or a little bit dominated by other people. Home responsibilities will be kind of a burden. Sixth house enemies are easily defeated. People who oppose this sign are easily dispatched. Rahu in the seventh house, strong desire for something other than the current relationship you're in. Now, that doesn't mean that Librans are ready to divorce their relationship partner, but they're not really happy with their relationships or their responsibilities. Mars and Moon are in the ninth house. Mars is retrograde in the ninth house, and it's going to go into the eighth house. So again, this sign will be a little bit victimized in relationships over the next couple of months, over the next 3 months or so. But I think one of the things you'll see is also that this sign's career luck will actually start to improve a little bit over the next few weeks. It's going to take a lot of effort for Libras to stay focused, and they'll actually get greeted with a lot of unexpected opportunities that they'll have difficulty meeting, but they can't meet them if they can just separate themselves and say, "Listen, I have some work to do right now. I can't go here or go there or do these other things you want me to do." So, but a lot of repeated work for almost every sign, a lot of stops and starts. For Scorpio, Venus is in the first house, Mars will soon be in the seventh house. A lot of focus on relationship life for this sign over the next few months. And Saturn aspecting Jupiter, the person wants a relationship to be loyal, to be successful, to be communicative, to be wealth enhancing, a lot of those things. So I think over the next week in particular, you'll see this sign really focusing very strongly on loyalty, and also a lot more people will be more highly sexualized, more highly and also more stubborn about their material needs and material wants. And they'll express it very aggressively. The sign is susceptible to Mars affliction because Mars will be in the seventh house. And so again, this sign, don't leap into a relationship just based upon the chemistry you feel for a person. Make sure that you're compatible. Get to know the person, really, really well. Don't make any leaps. Don't make any leaps into a long-term relationship until at least next February or March. For Sagittarius, Sagittarius has Jupiter in the fourth house, but is still aspected by Saturn. So again, home responsibilities will be very strong. Money will be there, but it will seem to be eked out very slowly. This is what's causing a lot of the inflationary pressure in the United States and around the world. Rahu's in the fifth house. Again, there's a lot of unhappiness that with this sign that it can't find people to believe in or people to trust. And that even includes children. And children will seem to be a little bit greedy or a little bit difficult to deal with. Mars is in the seventh house. This is Mars affliction. It won't last much longer, but it will come back in mid-January. And so, again, this sign has to watch out for partnerships with women, and it'll be in that kind of a situation really until around April. 11th house, friends are a little bit untrustworthy. Venus in the 12th house, friends will cost you money. For Capricorn, Saturn is in the first house. Our old friend Capricorn has Jupiter in the third house, so it wants to restrain its desires, just take it easy. It's not really happy with where it's living and it's a little bit confused about career goals, but that'll last for about another 6 to 7 months or so at least. And Mars and Moon are in the sixth house in this chart, so there will be some fights or arguments with women over the next week or so. Sun, Mercury, and Venus are in the 10th house, so that career ambiguity is very strong. Venus is in the 11th house. There'll be a lot of attractive people around you this particular month. For Aquarius, Aquarius has the Lord of the first house in the 12th house. That tends to make the sign spend a lot of money. It can spend money on home because Saturn is aspecting the second house, and family. Rahu's in the third house, but money will come in. Money will eventually come in. And I would say more strongly by mid-month. Jupiter will go direct relatively shortly in December, and we'll start to see some financial improvements for a lot of signs. Rahu is in the third house, strong desire, strong ambition in the sign, but luck isn't necessarily. And Mars is in the fifth house, so there'll be some altercation or some anger from children, not siblings. And also with that Sun K2 Mercury combination, in the ninth house, not a lot of luck, a lot of restrictions from relationship partners, and also a lot of confusion and forgetfulness from relationship partners show up with this combination. Venus is in the 10th. You will love what you do for at least for a little while. So take advantage of that and try to produce something strong within the next couple of days. Saturn, we've already said it's in the 12th house, so that does cause expenditure. So we're repeating ourselves. But Jupiter ruling the second and 11th house is good for money. For Pisces, finally, Pisces has a Saturn aspect on the first house. and Rahu in the second house. So it wants to do the right thing, but it's being reversed all the time. It's being conflicted all the time. And it's also unduly enthusiastic. Rahu's in the second house, and it wants more money than it can bring in right now. Mars is in the fourth. Some arguments in the home life, and K2's in Sun, K2, and Mercury are in the eighth house. That indicates some confusion or some unseen enemies for this sign. Venus is in the ninth, which is actually a good placement for it in this chart. So it actually gives fulfillment of desires through, at least for short term. Finally, Saturn sits in the 11th house. That's good for friendships, friendship partners or friendship and siblings will be good, but a little bit strict with you, a little bit tougher with you than normal. So that's it for the 12 signs. Now let's look at the world map and see where the action is. Okay. So we have, let's see if we can get this right. No. Oops, 1 second. Yeah, don't like it when it does that. Doesn't seem to be doing it what I want it to do. Okay. Okay, so zooming up. A little more than what I wanted. Let me break this. Get out of that. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, excellent. You see, if we work hard long enough and hard at it, we'll get it. All right, but I only have around 12 minutes to scan the globe, so let's see what I can do. Okay, so Jupiter and Alaska, as we've said before, are kind of inflationary areas. Again, not surprising given their location. Some anger or some violence looks like it's going to take place in these two islands, unfortunately. Western Canada has some potential for violence as well down this region, and some frustration with government is indicated on the West Coast. We have Sun, Mercury, and Rahu lines passing over Arizona. And again, I'm not playing into any conspiracy theory here, but there is some deceit showing up in these lines over here around Arizona and Nevada. So there's something funny going on there. Whether or not it's who's behind it, I can't tell from this map, but there is something funny going on in this part of the country. Interestingly enough, I think New York is showing some change. New York had a slew of Republican candidates win, and over here, Mercury, Saturn is going. I'm sorry, Saturn is going right through and converging with a Mercury line just below Mexico. So there'll be some conditions of poverty in that part of the world. Hardly surprising, but it's very strong. Also, there's a violent Mars happening in middle Canada, going all the way down through Florida, through Alabama, Georgia, and into Florida, Western Florida. So this could be, and into Cuba, and into northern, um, and into Colombia, and down into Venezuela, and even through Paraguay, Uruguay, and southern parts of Brazil. So, and Bolivia. So this looks interesting. The biggest potential for violence is actually this region right here, in it looks like in Bolivia or north central Bolivia. It's and also in Argentina, a little bit in Argentina. But I think you'll see this moon line going through Brazil. There'll be some violence or some strikes going on in Brazil still. This will be at least until the 15th, I think even a little bit beyond that. There's a Rahu line going over the Azores and Iceland, and also looks like the Canary Islands or Madeiras. And we have a Saturn line running over Western Africa near the Ivory Coast. So that indicates some domestic trouble there. And we have 3 lines, Sun, Mercury, Venus lines. So some disruption in government is indicated in those countries. Over here, Ghana, and also some violence in, looks like Norway, Finland, down through Germany, down through Greece, down through Italy, and into Central Africa, all the way down to South Africa. We have, let's see what that line is. That's a Jupiter line. So I don't like Mars and Jupiter lines together because Jupiter says, "Do you want more?" And Mars says, "Yeah, I want more. I want more violence, or I want more military." You know, so I'm not really crazy about Jupiter Mars conjunctions. The moon is, or Jupiter Mars planetary lines. The moon is going over I'm sorry, Western Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and down by Sudan, and down by Angola. And I think what we can see is there'll be some changes in governments, at least government officials in these regions. The Ukraine actually looks like there'll be some change in the actual war going on there, but that'll make it more aggressive, not less aggressive. We have a Rahu line going up over Western India into China, into Russia, and intersected by a Saturn line. So you'll start to see some economic problems in this part of the world, in Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, maybe even some conflicts in that part of the world. I hope not. Mars isn't involved, so I'm optimistic that there won't be problems from that perspective. We have Rahu, Venus, Mercury, sun lines converging in eastern India, going up through Bangladesh, going up through China. So the government is definitely lying in China and also in eastern India. About what, I'm not sure, but it might be about supplies, it might be about energy, because of supply chain issues. And finally, we get over to Malaysia and um, China. So it looks like there'll be some kind of martial activity, some kind of threatening martial activity from both China and North Korea from this map. The Mars line rests just over North Korea, so there'll be some conflicts. Japan will be remotely involved. He'll be worried about instability because of the Mars line hitting through northern Japan. And also the Philippines will be a little bit worried about it. So most of Indonesia, to be honest. And finally, Northwest Australia, some problems um, with um, with changes of government. And finally, we have a Saturn line and some misrepresentation going on in New Zealand. Shocking. New Zealand has a really excellent reputation, but that's what these lines indicate. So these three cluster lines, I expect to see a lot of activity over here, 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 and here, because of worries about the future and concerns about the future. And again, like I said, I think a lot of it's tied up to gas supplies or energy supplies. In terms of Mars going retrograde, I think one of the things to keep in mind is that actually it can open up avenues if it's handled correctly. It can close down avenues of energy production if it's handled badly. Now, again, I'm not looking at this from an ecological standpoint. I'm looking at it from an economic standpoint, just in terms of what societies need to survive and continue. The other thing is a larger picture, which I'm not looking at right now. Okay. So that's it for me for right now. I'm going to say a bit adieu and namaste. And I love everyone. And I hope you all have a wonderful week. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Hopefully, I'll have some new guests on very, very shortly. And I think you'll enjoy them. Okay. Thanks a lot, folks. You take care. Bye bye.